Let your team know what you're striving for. With growth comes opportunity. It's very easy to be adaptable and to adapt when you're small. And what I mean by that is when you only have 3 or 4 people in your organization, you roll out a new policy and program, you can walk down the hall and tell everybody.
Yeah.
You're making multi-million-dollar decisions that could take your business down immediately.
Think about it backwards. Think about it as, what is the end result I want? And then once you figure out what it is you want and you need, how do you input the information to get the data to get what you want? Welcome to Chasing Millions Podcast. I'm Eric.
And I'm Josh.
And today we have another episode for you. We are going to talk about the top 5 things businesses should be doing. And we are doing these 5 things because you should be doing them. AI. If you are not on board and paying attention to what AI is going to bring to you, and it's changing and ever evolving
Fast.
very, very fast. And to my point earlier today is that, from 3 years to right now, just in the basics of the platforms that we're using for our internal operating softwares, it's changed so much in 3 years. And now that's on like an exponential growth curve.
Yep.
Right.
So
if you're not paying attention, AI is where you need to be leaning towards and learning about in every aspect. I know I use it in my daily, and I know you use it in your daily.
exactly.
Right. So if you're not paying attention on the digital side, you better be, and you better be embracing the changes that are coming. Because if you're not, there's other people who are, and you're working from behind, and you don't want to be behind. I promise.
Exactly. And you know what? Pay attention to who you're signing up with. It takes a lot of time with a company our size to do a software integration or a change, right? When you figure out that, hey, I outgrew on a software, or hey, the software's not keeping up with its times, and you have to do a conversion, it takes a lot of time, effort, and money.
It does. And don't be afraid to do it, and I think that's where a lot of people get lost is, one of the majors is if you haven't ever done a software conversion, it's a bitch. It really is. It sucks. Nobody wants to do it. It's terrible. Because there's just no real easy way to do them. And there's always issues, and it's going to impact your business. And if you don't put a lot of thought into it, don't really put some regimented processes in there to do it and track and make sure you're staying on board and on track with everything. I mean, you can really cause some issues, which is why people typically shy toward just
keeping the old ways. Well,
right?
Old ways you die.
Old ways you die, man.
So let's talk about something else that the digital transformation can do for you. Let's talk about the customer experience,
which, in my opinion, is something that's overlooked a lot, and it is something that we take to heart here.
What's the most important thing in any business?
It really is, right?
No business is a business without a customer.
Yep, and there's lots of ways to gauge the customer experience, and we do a couple different things. One in particular that if you do it right and you have the right processes, not only is it good to get the feedback and good feedback, but it's also good for your marketing efforts, and that's Google reviews, and throwing that out there to those customers and making sure that you understand their experience. Right now, I'm not saying it's smart to throw a Google review link or anything to every single person, right? Because some of them you may not have done the best job you've ever done, right? Pick and choose your battles, but at the end of the day, getting your customer experience and understanding from the top to bottom of how they feel about your operations and learning and growing from those, because they're not always going to be good. Let's just be honest, right? You may start off with 3 employees and you physically touch every single one of them, and that they're going to be great because you did it, right? But the reality is if you continue to grow and next thing you know, you're in an office and you've got everybody else running, you still want that same customer experience. So you need to set up your systems to make sure that you understand what those challenges are that your customers are facing, and that you set up your processes and procedures to be able to mitigate any potential human error there that you can and give them the best possible experience you can. Because if you don't, somebody else is, and the customers are the most important.
Exactly. Customers, if you just listen, folks, they'll tell you what they're needing. And that in our world, we service commercial, industrial, residential events. We service multitude of different types of industries. So we have to listen to them. They're going to tell you what they're needing. They're going to tell you what the marketplace is lacking. So to your point, just listen, just use common sense. And then, it's kind of like I always think about it. How do you buy things off Amazon? You look at the stars,
Yeah, I
right?
mean,
If
we're
it has a
judging.
2-star, 3-star, you're not buying shit off Amazon in that product. You're going to go buy something, even if it's a little bit more expensive, that has a higher star rating, that people took the time, they left a review, they had a good experience, is a quality product or service. So, to your
Yeah,
point, reviews are huge. Word of mouth, that's something that's very tough to calculate, right? Those are, you can ask, set up some systems and ask some questions. How did you hear about us? Blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, try to give each one of your customers the highest experience possible. And Elon Musk is somebody I watch all the time. He doesn't even really put a lot of money around marketing because his products are so good. His end user experience is so high, and his innovation is so radical that people just want his product. And that's what we try to do: is how do we take something like Elon's done? And I'm not comparing myself to Elon, folks. He's a freak, but we're offering the same thing as everybody else's, but why would they order from Eric and Josh? Why would they order from On Call? Well, I feel like that is because the separation is the people, the service, the customer service, the quality of product, the attention to detail, etc. So,
last thing I'll add to that is when we're talking about customer experience. One of the major things I've learned is that as you get larger and larger and larger, I tailor my to some degree. I have a baseline requirement, right? A baseline. Uh, I don't even know what the words I'm looking for, but a baseline of what that service is going to get, right? We're going to be there in some specific amount of time. It's going to be at this particular standard, right? But don't let me kid you, and don't let anybody else kid you, that if you have a laundry list of customers and you have 10 of those, let's just say for plain simple numbers, let's say you have $5 million in business, okay? And 3 million of that is made up in 10 of those customers. You better tailor that customer experience for those 10 people that make up 4 of the $5 million potentially a little differently, right? If you got to have improved responsiveness for those 5 people or those 10 people, you may need to do that for a period of time, right? What I'm getting at is
what's the 80/20 rule, Eric? 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers.
exactly
So
right.
make sure you don't lose the 20%.
Don't lose the 20%. And if that means you need to increase the customer experience just for that fucking 80% of people, or that 20% of people that are making up that 80% of revenue, then I would do that.
Yep.
We live that.
Yep.
So
How do you retain customers? How do you give that customer experience at an all-time high? How do you give them that ultimate experience? It goes back to bullet point number 3 for us, and that is employee retention and development.
yep.
So one thing that we have learned being in business for many, many years is the longer you can retain a good employee, put a lot of attention, detail, and put a lot of love, put a lot of training, put a lot of motivation. The longer that person is integrated in your system and understands who the business is, or what the business is, and what it stands for, in my opinion, you're going to have a higher customer satisfaction.
Yeah, man. I mean, employee retention is right up there in my personal opinion with the customer experience. Just culture in general, which I think kind of ties directly into that, is keeping good people, keeping a good culture. A culture of communication, and of telling you of the issues. Because at the very beginning, like we were talking earlier, you may be doing a lot of that work, but the reality is that if you continue to grow and you continue to scale, you're going to be up out of that truck and in that office, and you don't know what's going on out there, right? Well, if you set the parameters correct and you have the right individuals that you have nurtured and taught and trained yourself, right, then there's a lot higher likelihood that they're going to be given a very, very close level of service to what you are being able to give them, right? And being able to do that and retain those people and train those people and give them what they need and listen. A listening ear sometimes is all that they need. Like my policy has always been the same, right? From 3 people to 100 plus people is my door's open, and we have a hierarchy of management like anybody else does. But if this guy's not listening, you go to the next guy, right? Or you give this guy gets a certain amount of opportunities, he goes to the next guy. If this guy doesn't, ultimately you can come to my office. I don't give a crap. If you're a yard guy that's working for $12 an hour, if your managers or product managers aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, my door's open, right? So that's very, very important in developing your employees and having that open door policy and just having a good culture in general of retention and in nurturing and bringing people from within and growing with those individuals. Because some of the challenges that we've seen recently is we try to bring somebody from outside in, and you already have an established system and culture. And then you bring those people in, and there's a lot of challenges with that from other people that are below and above, and somebody having to manage that individual that you may have brought in that he had no say so. I can go on and on and on,
Yeah.
right? But at the end of the day, right, focus on employee development, focus on retention, and focus on your culture.
Yeah, and I would finish this off with is one thing I'd like to do is let your team know where you're going.
Yeah.
A lot of times I get around companies and everything's so kept secret. We have a high growth mentality. We want to be, I think we are the largest portable restroom company in the state of Oklahoma now. We want to be one of the largest dumpster companies and probably the largest privately owned container company here shortly. So let your team know where you're striving forward. With growth comes opportunity.
Yep.
So, if you find somebody that's going above and beyond, or you find somebody that has a lot of potential, put some time and effort and love in them so you can hire within. So,
Love it.
point number 4, I would say this is a very, very, very important point, and it's a point that I practice heavily myself, and sometimes it creates a lot of frustration within. Stay lean, and now when I mean lean, stay very lean and be very adaptable. Let's talk on the second point of that, adaptability. It's very easy to be adaptable and to adapt when you're small, right? The larger you get, the harder it is to adapt. And what I mean by that is when you only have 3 or 4 people in your organization, you roll out a new policy and program, you can walk down the hall and tell everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And
Hey, new change.
yeah. But as Eric and I have built this company with help of many employees and partners, is the larger you get, the more you have to think through things. But you still have to be willing to take on that challenge, willing to adapt new policies and procedures, willing to roll those out, willing to spend the time and effort to do that. And a lot of those, when you get to our size, it takes a lot of money to do that. I know that we mentioned previously that you're implementing a new CRM program and a new operating software, right? Well, to do that, it takes a lot of money and upfront cost. How do you afford to pay for those costs? Because we hear multiple times, folks, well, I just don't have the money to pay for it. Well, how do you do that? You stay lean. Don't get too fat. If you stay lean and you know where your money's coming from and you keep your team lean and mean, you will always have, or most likely have, enough excess money to take on those new challenges and pay for those new integrations and those new systems and add employees as you need them, maybe a little bit earlier than you need them, but you can add them when you need them.
Yeah. And I'll say this because I live and breathe this, right? Is staying financially lean. It really kind of depends on your situation, right? If you are working on your own capital like we do, staying financially lean is imperative to do, right? If we use up all of our funds, then we can't go make the next acquisition, right? So we have to be paying extra attention to the finances every single month, doing projections, making sure our financial packages are due every single month at the same time, reviewing them, looking at them together, making sure we make any changes necessary that we see they're out of whack, right? And what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, there are times when you want to be financially lean, and then there are times where you may need to be ramping up and you're a little fatter in certain points of time, right? To give you a perfect example is there's times a year, some of our stuff is a little seasonal. So there's times a year where I have to prepare, right, for something coming up that may require a whole lot more employees, but it may not come for another 2 or 3 months, right? But I know the systems and the process and what people need to learn. There's times where I have to get individuals and employees and team members on our team in advance, right? Which is not going to fall under being financially lean, but it is getting to that point to where I have to be early. So there's some
Give
give
me an
and take,
example. Let me
right?
give you an example of what Eric's referring to. Eric has a very large client here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they do these things called turnarounds. And to do a turnaround, they ramp up 3 or 4 months in advance. Well, you don't need all these employees after the turnaround. So you have to ramp up, you have to train and hire and love and get people ready to go to service this client. And then you service the client, right? And then more than likely you scale down afterwards.
Depending on the situation.
So he's going to incur a lot of cost in advance, right? But this goes back to almost step number 5 that we're going to touch on here in a second. But be adaptable. Understand where your numbers are. Factor that into your bid and the cost of doing business.
Yep.
Don't just ramp up and be the cheapest guy on the deal. But oh man, I didn't think we were going to incur payroll for 3 months in advance or 2 months in advance because you had to train those people.
Yep.
Stay lean, but don't be too lean. You know what I mean? There's been points in time where I've been too lean. It's put a lot of pressure on my team, and or we stopped growing because our team was too lean. We couldn't take on any new tasks, and or the tasks that we were taking on were B-level quality products that we were throwing out. So,
and the very last thing on that topic is long and short of it is eliminating your waste. Right? Is be in tune with your business. Look at your P&Ls and understand it to the tone of, if you can look at something, you figure out you're wasting money. You're spending too much on tires. Dig into that. Figure out why that is. Figure out how to eliminate waste. It's unneeded, right? Maybe you're not leveraging your vendors. I don't know, right? There's lots of situations, but at the end of the day, to stay financially lean, you need to be eliminating waste all around at all times. And that means from the top down. That means you need to be looking at it. You need to express that to your managers, to your COOs, your CFOs, right? They need to understand that. They need to understand what they're reading, and they need to understand what is waste and what is not waste, and when to step in and make that decision and eliminate that waste.
Yep. So brings us to the last point number 5, that I think and these are 5 points that bullet points that we think you should do. There's many more points that you should do running a successful business, right?
These are, in my opinion, these are our top 5 things that are very, very important right now.
Yeah. So the number 5 point is a very difficult point because I want to kind of set the tone here. If you don't act on this point with the correct data, it's pretty much irrelevant. And this goes to point number 5 is data and analytics, which ultimately is going to reflect your decision-making ability. There's been too many times I've seen companies throw out all these data points their data is completely inaccurate. I'll give you an example. We bid on projects. We bid on the projects off the data given. And a lot of times, many times over and over and over again, we bid on projects with false data. Their data is not accurate.
Yeah.
Right? So that can also reflect on the company that you're running. So if you are analyzing data and you are making decisions based off that data, and that can go from implementing a new CRM program, that could be leaning out some of your employees, that could be buying new equipment, whatever the issue may be, right? Positive, negatively, make sure your data is correct.
That's important.
Don't make decisions off bad data.
Well, that is, geez. I mean, you're running a rat. You're running a rat wheel if you do that, right? Yeah. But to your point, there's the 5 points that we made today are all extremely, extremely important. And in my opinion, some of these are in levels, right? Like digital transformation. Yeah, I mean, it is very important. And if you're not staying up the times, you're probably not going to make it much longer, right? But at the end of the day, there's a bunch of these points on here we're talking about. But once you get to a certain level and you have good people, and if you are not getting good data, right, to make your decisions, like you're fucking up bad, right?
You're out of business.
You're out of business
because at the level you're at now, Eric, when you make decisions, you're making decisions that can not only to impact you, but impacts multiple over 100
so many families,
100 plus employees. Plus, you're making multi-million-dollar decisions that could take your business down immediately.
I know, right? And that's an added stress level. But at the end of the day, guys, if you have good culture, and you got good team, you've done a good job bringing your people in, the right people that are doing a great job, and you know that you're getting good data, and you have the data, you better be using it. You better be using it to your abilities in every aspect. And we're still learning. Let's get that straight, right?
Yeah.
So give you a perfect example. So we're getting lots of sales data, right? And there's some of these sales data items that I've been researching that we just don't do, right? And we're looking at that. We already have the information. We just don't extract it out, put it together, make it make sense, and use it to make decisions. So what I'm saying to anybody who's listening is number one, make sure you get good data. Make sure you're capturing your data. And another lesson that I learned, and I'm going off topic a little bit, but another lesson I learned is understand what you need first. Meaning, if you're looking for something, right? And I'll give you some examples. Like if you want to understand what your cost per conversion is on ads, or your cost per conversion on sales, or whatever it may be, right? You need the data to be able to understand that. But you don't know what data you're looking for until you understand what you're looking for. So what I'm saying to everybody who's listening is a practice that I just went through is, now that I've been immersed in this for so long, sometimes I feel like, you get lost in it sometimes. And you're like, okay, think about it backwards. And maybe this will help you. Is think about it backwards. Think about it as, what is the end result I want? And then once you figure out what it is you want and you need, then how do you input the information to get the data to get what you want? So if you can figure out what it is that you need and what you want, then you can figure out the right people, if you don't already have them, that can figure out how to formulate and get the information put into a system to extract it to get what you need. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yep. So
I use it differently.
Yeah. People think about things a lot
Because I'm
differently.
more on the finance side, so I look at it from like, okay, hey, we're spending I have the correct data because we have your truck maintenance costs broken down, right? We're spending $1 million a year on tires.
Yep.
Well, it's probably time to go set a national account up.
Yep.
Right? Because I have good data. I can hand it to a tire, Goodyear, BF Goodrich, whomever, right? And say, hey, look, we're spending $1 million on tires. Do you want all of our business? We'll hand it to you. We want this discount. Yep. And, that goes back to you can driving down more bottom line dollars, which allows you to take more risk because you have more money to go play with, right? Yep. So you can break down data from, to your point, to marketing and advertising, what you do with it, from gathering emails and phone numbers and all kinds of things, to just negotiating better tire prices. How about fuel spend? Fuel's a big deal for you. Understanding how much fuel you're burning a month and negotiating a really good fuel contract. Parts, that's another one back to your truck.
Yeah, we went through that.
Payroll. We just went through the payroll cycle and switching on payroll companies and benefits and 401k and all this stuff. And once you have the data and you can hand it to vendors and they can make it, the kicker is if you hand them good data and you can back up what you say you're going to hand them, you can negotiate yourself a really good deal.
That's right.
But when you hand them bad data and they realize that they got bad data, just like sometimes we have gotten bad data, sometimes they got to come back to you and renegotiate a price.
Yeah, or you make a wrong contract decision based on bad information. Bad information is not good. No matter how you look at it, right?
And so you can be on both sides of that.
You can be on both sides of that. To your point, right? You can take the data that you have, right, and you can leverage that and make good decisions.
Yeah.
Right. But you can also look at the other way, which is what I've been trying to look at it is, what is my end result? What am I looking for? And then how do I get to that from the data? Does that make sense? So there's two ways to look at that, right? And I think you need to look at in everything that we talk about, anything in business, you need to try to look at it from every angle. So, and I'm not your
and as you grow, the better you can hire better people to give you more data points or more accurate, and they can do it for you.
Correct. But
so let me throw in a secret number 6 bullet point where I think it's very, very imperative. I see so many businesses, including myself at the very beginning, early off in my business career, is setting up a company goal. And if you're an owner and you're an entrepreneur, you have to set yourself a goal to obtain. For me, it's a dollar goal, right?
Yeah.
So knowing what I just said, let's say it's 100 million or 50 million or 10 million, or you're just starting, it's a $2 million point or $1 million, it could be 100,000. The number is really irrelevant. Set yourself up a goal. All these topics that we just spoke about, all these data points and all these top 5 things, and there's many more, will allow you to prioritize that, right? In my opinion, customer experience and customers the number one priority, right? And then what you do with that customer data and how you manipulate it and how do you sell to that, that's a whole nother game. But set yourself up a goal and work your number backwards. If your goal is $1 million, that each transaction is an average of $100. It's pretty easy to figure out how many transactions it takes to do that. And then you can back in those numbers and say, it's going to take this many people to manage that amount of transactions, right? And service. So set yourself up a goal.
That's a good thought. I'm glad you brought that up as a bullet point, man, because I never really thought about it that way before me and you started doing the business together. And looking at things and looking at it backwards. And I think that's kind of where I gathered what I was talking about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Is you can look at that a lot of ways. And I think to Josh's point, if you're a business owner and you're sitting here and you don't have a yearly goal of what you're looking for or a quarterly, right? Or it's some kind of a goal that you're trying to achieve, right? And then working your numbers backwards to figure out where you're at along the process, man, I don't really know what you're doing.
Yeah, I've spoke to so many business owners. Where are you going? What's your goal?
Yeah,
and they're just kind of living the day in and day out process and tackling problems as they come, right? But if you set yourself a goal, and don't be afraid to set a very high goal, right? It's going to create a sense of urgency in your life. It's going to create a target that you can aim for instead of just kind of moseying around, going through the day in and day out grind, right? And it'll give you a level of you'll be able to gauge yourself and say, hey, look, man, I had $1 million goal this year and I hit 200,000. Why?
Yeah.
Or hey, I'm on the track. First quarter, I'm 400,000 short of my goal, year-end goal. If I keep on this track, what do I need to change?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and then the last point to that is, if you do hit your goal, the business doesn't stop there, right? What do we do every year?
Reset it.
We reset that son of a gun, right? You
Yeah.
gotta reset your goals. When you meet them, you high five, and the game's not over, right? The game's not over. You gotta reset your goals, and maybe next time make it a little harder, right? Think about that.
Yeah.
Maybe make it a little harder to get to, because if you breeze through your first goal, then maybe you underachieved. You hit your goal, maybe you underachieved.
You're better than what you thought.
You're better than what you thought you did, right?
Yeah.
So, think about it that way. And that's what we do. That's how we operate, and it's been successful for us. So hopefully it'll be for you. But
entrepreneurship world is the best experience of my life. I've worked for people. I've worked with people. But being an entrepreneur is a special thing. There's many people that dream about being an entrepreneur and very few that can be successful at doing it. Yeah. So, guys, it's just about going through the grind, paying attention, do what you say you're going to do, building yourself a core team, trust that team. They'll trust you, love on them, support them, and just at the end of the day, just show up day in and day out for a long period of time. And that's what entrepreneurship is really the ultimate. That's what it is. It's just be willing to go through the grind day in and day out for a long period of time. And if you can do that and you stay lean and you use your data, right, you'll be successful.
Let's go. Like and subscribe. Come on.